I think USG has the most ability of any organization on campus to really affect change and to work with the administration to advocate for student priorities, but we need to do a lot more to really make sure that we're speaking for the entire student body and not just groups that we're a part of, groups that we identify with, or groups that we come from.
I'm running for president because during my work as a senator, I came to realize how much we need change on campus. I've seen this through working and meeting with Dr. Folt, through several different initiatives that I've pursued. And it's become very clear that there is a huge mental health crisis at USC.
I'm running to be president of USG because I have been inspired by working with people in USG this past year. My whole life I've been taught to serve others, and in everything that I do, in every community that I'm a part of, it's all rooted in service. And so what better way to continue my mission of service than to serve the student body as the next USG president?
Well, my main reason for running for USG president is because I know how USG can impact the lives of students in the everyday. The way that USG can have a positive effect on our community, on our campus, and on the everyday life of students. And my main priorities basically focus around 4 different points: wellness, accountability, inclusion, and sustainability.
I think the key to pretty much every promise that any candidate will tell you is making sure that students have a formalized stake in the decision-making process. And I think that ultimately means having a student on the Board of Trustees. The Board of Trustees is the ultimate decision-making body at the university, and until we have a student sitting there, we won't be fulfilling the promises of transparency and accountability that the administration has been making.
It's our job as president and vice president candidates to ensure that we would work with not only administration but student media to disperse information from initiatives that we're pursuing and meetings that we're having with administrators. Additionally, it's really important to keep transparency at an all-time high within the student government organization, because there are different branches, and those different branches are responsible for disseminating the knowledge to the overall student body.
We are working to create more communication avenues within USG by creating and consolidating projects and initiatives so that they're more effective and strategic. Additionally, we're going to work with outside RSOs, student organizations, and the USC administration in order to continue creating these avenues of communication, having this personal relationship and continuing to foster that relationship while also making sure to represent the student body's needs as a whole.
Now, I've been trying to make USG more transparent, but really, this year, I've also been trying to make the administration more transparent and more accessible to the students by highlighting everything that they have going on, by working with them to make sure that they're reaching out to students, and by working with Carol Folt and her office directly to get her involved in students and student engagement on the first hand. We've seen plenty of examples of that through her Instagram. I like to think that I have had a part in that.
I think our student body is incredibly diverse, but the problem is that we're too focused on the numbers and not on the experience. It's not enough to just admit certain quotas of different types of students. We need to make sure that once those students get to campus, they're receiving the support that they need and they're feeling like they're a part of the Trojan family. I think as far as recruiting faculty and recruiting staff, that's a slightly different ballgame because we can even improve our numbers in those areas.
We mentioned that we wanted to increase cultural competence in the professional staff at the health center. This means getting more psychologists of color and increasing diversity so students can more easily relate to the staff at the health center. We want undergraduate student government to represent all students on campus, and we've created a platform that serves these different groups and these different student leaders on campus as well.
Growing up for me, I never really saw Asian women or Asian women in positions of leadership, and so this opportunity for me is something that is so incredible and so unique and important, and something that I really hold close to my heart. And moving forward as the USG president, I will definitely make sure to keep diversity in the forefront of my mind, especially when having important discussions about diversity and inclusion with the USC administration.
Diversity, inclusion, and equity are all increasingly more important aspects of our university and our community. It is impossible for 2 people alone to represent 20,000 students, 80,000 people who come to this campus every day. We have to all do this together. We have to band together in order to make meaningful change on this campus. Rose and I have the experience, the leverage, and the know-how to be able to do that and to change vision into actual policy.
I think a big thing we can do is try to get students off campus a little more. USC can be part of a walled city to some degree, and students really have no idea who lives in their community. I think it's the least we can do to do more outreach, to get our students out into the community, and to make sure that we are building those relationships in a way that is beneficial for both the university and South Los Angeles.
I think that community engagement is integral to fostering a community between the surrounding community as well as USC students, administration, and faculty. We're only as great as the community we're in, and that's not just within USC, but throughout South Los Angeles as a whole.
It's really important that we establish what USG stands for. Once we've established this the fundamental principles that we stand for and our avenues of communication, I think then it will be the right time to branch out and start working with community members and the neighboring communities within USC.
USC has not been a good neighbor. I'm the first person to say that. We have a USG Director of External Affairs who works in directly outreach into the community. I think we need to put more resources into that team, as well as the President and Vice President for USG, as well as the President of the university, need to make more strides themselves to personally go out into the community.
I mean, hate speech is horrible. That's my biggest stance. I think we should do whatever we can to combat it. I think the biggest thing that USG can do is bring people together in a way that we have open dialogues about this stuff, and then ensure that our budget priorities focus on advocacy work, cultural assemblies, and other groups that are actively combating hate speech.
If a speaker wants to come on campus and express their views, they can, as long as it does not harm any student or student beliefs or targets any student's personal values. But we don't stand for any sort of hate speech on campus or any individual who would be targeting a group on campus.
I think that USC definitely has responsibility in eliminating hate speech and making sure that every member of USC feels that they belong here. I do not want anyone from any walk of life to ever feel like this is not a safe space for them at USC, and it's because of this that Miles and I will work to eliminate any forms of hate or any forms of discrimination to make sure that every member of USC feels like they belong on this campus.
As we saw from last year, there was a lot of dialogue concerning hate speech and free speech and the difference between the two. There is no place on this campus for hate speech. Let me be perfectly frank with that. That's the vision and that's the purpose of USG as stated in our Constitution and as stated in our mission, to bring people together, not to make them divided. And so as your next president, I hope to be able to encourage free speech, but never hate speech.
I think USC has been unaffordable for decades, and the fact that tuition keeps going up obviously only makes it worse. One of our priorities will be working with the administration to look at putting a tuition cap or a tuition freeze for students that enter in their first year. But even more than that, I think it's important that we understand where our tuition is going. So working with administration to increase transparency about specifically where revenue generated from tuition is being spent around the university to make sure that that aligns with the priorities of our student body.
We want to work on decreasing tuition and preventing tuition spikes, but we also want to increase the amount of scholarships that are given to students, and we want to ensure that we allocate funding for different groups on campus. We want to increase funding for students who are in Greek but cannot afford the dues every semester, as well as increasing funding for lower socioeconomic students.
This is an issue and topic that Miles and I are still exploring as we speak. So before I can answer this question fully, I really would like to speak to the USC administration, speak to them on why these tuition prices are increasing and how we can work with the USC administration to alleviate these prices to make sure that every member of USC feels that they are financially able to come to this campus.
A lot of what we need to do, not only as USG, but as a student body, is to stand up and fight back. USG has a huge role in being able to unite students across campus for a singular mission. We need to make sure that administrators see our faces, see how distressed we are, and see that we are rising to the call to action. USG needs to be at the forefront of that. Very few things that USG does alone can have that impact. Only by working together and by being strong with everyone else can we actually make a meaningful impact.
Yes.
why? And possibly how.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think the biggest thing that we can do, sort of like tuition transparency, is make sure that students have a little more clarification on exactly what the university is investing in. Obviously, it's important to have a robust endowment to ensure that we have a strong revenue stream and to make sure the tuition doesn't have to keep rising. So I think the first step is having some more disclosure about what exactly we're invested in, and then once that happens, we can look at how to transition those investments into greener industries.
Administration has told us that that is more of a long-term solution. Currently, we want to focus more on reducing plastic waste and water consumption or water waste on campus as well. An example of an initiative that we're trying to push forward is, instead of plastic straws, having corn straws on campus. I definitely do want to continue the conversation on whether we should be using fossil fuels on campus. I think in the future of USC, we're going to divert from that, but I definitely think it's an important conversation to have with administrators.
Yes, the university should divest from fossil fuels. I think that is not only advantageous for USC to divest on its use of fossil fuels, but it's a tangible step in terms of creating more sustainable practices on campus.
Yes. To be completely frank, yes. If the administration is sustainably focused and is focused on making an impact, they need to recognize that their investment can have an impact on where the fossil fuel industry is heading and where it could be heading potentially if we choose to divest. We need to work with ESA, we need to work with the Environmental Corps, we need to work with the administration to be able to find out not only how much money is in those fossil fuels right now, but where to redirect them to, whether it's renewable energy or different sources within that sector. That would be the best way to do it.
Mental health issues are probably the top priority that we can have at this point. This is a crisis. This is something we have to deal with. I think the biggest thing we need to do is destigmatize it. If you need help, get help, but then make sure that we are following through with our promises about the help. I think student health has been making great strides, and I think the biggest thing USG can do is promote a culture where mental health is prioritized and where it's destigmatized.
The first component is accessibility. Undergraduate student government has developed different resources for students this semester. For example, Ask RE is a resource that we have where students can turn to this online server and ask them any questions they have. We want to make sure students know about these resources, but we also do believe that there's a lot of work to be done. We want to decrease wait times at the health center. We definitely want to increase the number of professional services offered, and we want to extend the hours because most emergencies don't happen from like 9 to 5.
We actually have a whole mental health platform that we are running on. It's titled Wellness just because we also included sexual assault in there as well. But mental health is something that is really important to me because I really struggled with it growing up when coming from an Asian culture. Within our platform, something that we really want to advocate is to establish the Director of Accessibility and the Student Assembly for Accessibility within USG. Student Assembly for Accessibility is fairly new, and they deal with all types of disabilities. Additionally, Miles and I also have an external platform point that we are also working on as well, and this being working with individual USC schools. We know that Engelman really is overworked with its resources, so what better way than to really target individual schools, try to implement wellness programs there.
The main thing that I think a lot of people are missing right now, not students but the candidates themselves, is that yes, we can install another floor on Engelman, but at the end of the day, there's not enough money coming to student health. We need to be able to shift the priority and the thinking of the administration from fault down to be able to prioritize where the money is going towards students.
Well, there's a lot of stuff that we've been doing this year. The one that I'm most excited about is undergraduate transit subsidies, which we've been making incredible progress on. This would allow undergraduate students to buy a Metro U pass that would give them unlimited rides on any public transit agency in Los Angeles County for the semester, and that's obviously fantastic for reducing carbon emissions from car trips, as well as increasing affordability and access for students to go out into the community to build those relationships and to access jobs or internships that they might have.
As a senator, I've been partnered to work with ESA on campus, and I've learned so much from the members of ESA in terms of sustainability. Not only have I contacted businesses at the village to reduce plastic use, we've tried to create a zero waste dining hall system as well.
I was a part of different marketing initiatives for sustainability events to take place, that being with ESA and the director of sustainability within USG. When they had their climate strike, I was a really big part of making sure that everyone knew that that was happening, a really big part of the promotional team. For me specifically, it means reducing water usage and recycling more within my household.
I've worked a lot with Isabella Caltabiano, who's the current Director of Sustainability Affairs for USG. Get a lot of communications, get a lot of education out about sustainability. We have a Zero Waste Carnival coming up. We've done a lot of different things this year in terms of making sure that there's sustainability on the row. Rose and I have both been involved in that. I think a lot of it is saying, hey, be more mindful about how you're using electricity, about how you're using different resources, about the plastic that you're using on a daily basis. And I like to think I've had a small impact in that in terms of my communications work.